The Radiance of Living Alone, Elizabeth's Journey of Independence. Introduction: the choice to live on one's own terms. Imagine reaching the age of 80 and still being fully immersed in the joys of life, making choices that are truly yours, moving at your own pace, and cherishing the freedom of self-reliance. For many, old age brings the expectation of slowing down, relying on others, and perhaps losing control over life's simplest decisions. But for Elizabeth, an 80-year-old woman full of grace, energy, and a zest for life, these are misconceptions that she is determined to break. Elizabeth's life is an example of the power of living independently well into one's later years. She shatters the conventional image of an elderly person who needs constant care, companionship, or dependency. Instead, Elizabeth embraces a life of solitude not as a burden, but as an empowering choice, one that gives her the autonomy she deeply values and the fulfillment she continually seeks. Elizabeth's journey through her golden years serves as a beacon of hope, defying societal expectations and proving that living alone can be an enriching and joyful experience. It's not just about growing older, it's about living with intention, embracing the choices you make, and finding peace and happiness in independence. Challenging society's view on aging. In many societies, reaching the age of 80 is seen as a significant milestone, often marked by a gentle surrender to the need for care. It's a time when many elderly individuals are expected to depend on their children or enter a care facility. Society has created a narrative that assumes, after a certain age, individuals can no longer manage their own affairs or live independently. Yet, Elizabeth's life challenges this notion head-on. When Elizabeth turned 80, she was flooded with invitations from her children to move in with them, to enjoy the comfort of family life in her final years. Each offer was met with a gracious but firm refusal. "I'm perfectly capable of taking care of myself," she told them with a warm smile. "Why would I need to burden you when I'm doing so well on my own?" To outsiders, it might seem strange. After all, isn't it the duty of children to care for their aging parents? Isn't it normal for an 80-year-old to live with their children or at least close by? Elizabeth doesn't see it that way. For her, living alone represents freedom, autonomy, and control over her life. 3 things she cherishes deeply. "I've lived a full life, and I don't need anyone to take over my choices now," she says with confidence. Aging should be about maintaining your dignity and independence, not handing it over to someone else. Her story turns the traditional narrative on its head. Rather than viewing aging as a decline in one's abilities, Elizabeth sees it as a continuation of life's journey, one where she still holds the reins. The Freedom of Solitude. Elizabeth's decision to live alone at 80 is not rooted in stubbornness or a rejection of help. Instead, it's a conscious choice, one that is rooted in her love for freedom. "There's something incredibly peaceful about living by yourself," she explains. "I don't have to adjust my life to anyone else's schedule. I can wake up when I want, eat when I want, and spend my days exactly as I please." For Elizabeth, this freedom is everything. She recounts how, when she visits her children, she always feels slightly out of place. "It's not their fault," she says with a chuckle. "It's just that I'm used to my own way of doing things. In their homes, there are rooms I feel I shouldn't enter, or things I feel I shouldn't touch. That's not how I want to live." Elizabeth's children adore her, and they've made every effort to accommodate her needs. But she doesn't want that. "I don't want to disrupt their lives," she explains. "They have their own routines, their own families, and I don't want to impose on that. Living with them would mean compromising my freedom, and that's something I'm not willing to do." This commitment to independence extends beyond her living arrangements. Elizabeth also refuses to hire a caretaker, even though she could easily afford one. "I don't want a stranger in my home," she says. "I've always been a private person, and I value my space. Plus, caretakers are expensive, and my pension is for me, not for someone else." Despite the pressures from her children to accept help, Elizabeth stands firm in her decision. "As long as I'm physically able, I'll take care of myself," she says resolutely. "I've always believed that if you stop using your body, it starts to deteriorate. That's why I exercise every day, no matter the weather." A journey to longevity villages. Elizabeth's commitment to maintaining her independence is no accident. In her late 70s, she embarked on a journey that would change her outlook on aging forever. She traveled to several longevity villages around the world, remote places where people routinely live past 100 years. These villages, often tucked away in rural areas, have become famous for their elderly populations, who not only live long lives, but do so with energy, vitality, and purpose. "What I saw in those villages was incredible," Elizabeth recalls. "The elderly there were so full of life. They didn't wait for others to help them. They did everything themselves. They worked in the fields, tended their homes, and stayed active all day long." This way of life left a lasting impression on Elizabeth. They weren't wealthy, but they were happy. They had a purpose every day. They didn't sit around waiting for someone to take care of them. They believed in doing things for themselves, and that's what kept them going. Elizabeth returned from her travels with a new perspective on aging. "I realized that the key to a long and happy life is staying active, both physically and mentally. Those elderly people didn't have much, but they were rich in spirit. They had determination, optimism, and a deep sense of purpose." Inspired by what she had learned, Elizabeth made a vow to herself. "I promised I would never become complacent," she says. "No matter how old I get, I will keep moving, keep learning, and keep doing things for myself." Since then, Elizabeth has followed through on that promise. She exercises every day, rain or shine. She goes for long walks, practices yoga, and even lifts weights. "I may be 80, she says with a smile, "but I feel like I'm 60. My body is strong because I've worked hard to keep it that way." The financial realities of living alone. One of the biggest challenges for many elderly people who live alone is financial stability. After her husband passed away 10 years ago, Elizabeth had to learn how to manage her finances on her own. "We were comfortable when my husband was alive," she recalls. "We had enough to live well, and we even helped our children financially." But after her husband's death, Elizabeth had to make some tough decisions. "My husband and I used to give our son and daughter-in-law $600 a month to help with their mortgage," she explains. "But after he passed, I couldn't afford to keep doing that." Elizabeth sat down with her children and had an honest conversation. "I told them that I could no longer give them money," she says. "It was a difficult conversation, but they were very understanding. They told me that I should focus on taking care of myself and that they didn't need my financial support anymore." Since then, Elizabeth has been managing her $1,500 monthly pension carefully. She divides it into 3 parts: one for daily expenses, one for bills, and one for savings. "It's not a lot," she admits, "but it's enough. I live within my means, and I'm very careful with my money." Elizabeth's frugality has allowed her to maintain her independence without sacrificing her quality of life. "I don't need much to be happy," she says. "As long as I have a roof over my head, food on the table, and a little bit of money for savings, I'm content." She believes that financial independence is crucial for elderly people who want to live alone. "If you rely too much on others for money, you lose control over your life," she explains. I've always believed that the best way to stay independent is to manage your own finances, setting boundaries with family. Elizabeth's relationship with her children is one of mutual respect and understanding. From the beginning, she made it clear that she wanted to live independently and not rely on them for support. "I love my children dearly," she says, "but I don't want to be a burden to them. They have their own lives to live, and I don't want to interfere with that." This philosophy extends beyond financial matters. Elizabeth is careful not to meddle in her children's personal lives. "I've seen so many elderly parents who try to control their children's lives," she says. "They think they're helping, but all they're doing is causing stress." Elizabeth has always taken a different approach. "I let my children live their own lives," she says. "I don't interfere with their decisions, and they don't interfere with mine. We respect each other's boundaries, and that's what keeps our relationship strong." She also believes in maintaining a healthy distance from her children. "I think it's important for parents and children to have their own space," she explains. "If you're too involved in each other's lives, it can create tension." Elizabeth has built a rich social life outside of her family. She has a close-knit group of friends who live in her neighborhood, and they often get together for tea, card games, and long chats. "I have my own life," she says. "I don't need to rely on my children for companionship." Her children, in turn, appreciate her independence. "They call me a hedonistic old lady," she laughs, "but it's just a joke. They know I'm happy living my life the way I want to." Embracing the present. For Elizabeth, the key to a happy and fulfilling old age is living in the present. "I've learned not to dwell on the past," she says. "What's done is done, and I can't change it. So why let it ruin my mood?" This mindset has been a driving force in Elizabeth's life. She believes that staying positive and focusing on the here and now is the secret to aging gracefully. "I cherish each day," she says. "I wake up every morning and think about all the things I'm grateful for. That's what keeps me going." Elizabeth has had her share of hardships, but she doesn't let them define her. "I've had losses just like everyone else," she says, "but I don't let those losses weigh me down. I've learned to focus on the things that bring me joy." One of those things is her love for nature. "I spend a lot of time outdoors," she says. "There's something so calming about being in nature. It reminds me that life is always moving forward, and that we have to keep moving with it." Elizabeth's daily routine reflects her positive outlook on life. She starts each day with a cup of tea on her porch, watching the sunrise and listening to the birds. She then goes for a long walk around her neighborhood, greeting her neighbors along the way. In the afternoon, she spends time tending to her garden, reading books, or working on puzzles. "I like to keep my mind sharp," she says. "I think that's just as important as keeping your body healthy." In the evenings, Elizabeth enjoys cooking herself a simple, healthy meal. "I love experimenting with new recipes," she says. "It's one of the little joys of living alone. I can cook whatever I want, whenever I want." The beauty of living alone. For Elizabeth, living alone at 80 is not a lonely or isolating experience. In fact, she sees it as one of the greatest joys of her life. "I've never felt more at peace," she says. "Living alone has given me the freedom to truly be myself." She believes that anyone, no matter their age, can find happiness in solitude if they approach it with the right mindset. "You have to believe in yourself," she says. "You have to trust that you can take care of yourself, that you can live a full and meaningful life without relying on others." Elizabeth's story is one of resilience, determination, and self-reliance. She has defied societal expectations and created a life that is rich in joy, peace, and independence. "Aging doesn't have to be something to fear," she says. "It's just another chapter in life, And if you approach it with an open heart and a positive attitude, it can be one of the best chapters yet. Elizabeth's journey is a testament to the power of independence. She has shown that living alone, even in old age, can be a deeply fulfilling and empowering experience. And as she looks to the future, she does so with optimism, knowing that she has the strength and resilience to face whatever comes her way. If Elizabeth's story has inspired you, please share your thoughts in the comments. Your feedback means the world to us.